However, comparatively, Dustin's fist was much smaller than Flint's. "You're asking for it." Flint snorted coldly. He exerted more force in his arm, his internal energy surging out from his body. There was a loud explosion as the two men's fists collided with each other. Dustin stood there without budging an inch. Cracks began forming beneath his feet. On the other hand, the moment their fists crashed into each other, Flint let out a grunt. He flew backward, slamming against the wall heavily, leaving a crater in his wake. The arm that he used to throw the punch was dripping with blood, and his bones were shattered. He couldn't move anymore. After 2 seconds, he finally couldn't hold back anymore and coughed up a mouthful of blood. His body began to crumple slowly, sliding down the wall like wet mud. How is that possible? Duncan was stunned by what happened. Although Flint wasn't as strong as Cobalt, he was still ranked 13 on the 100 Immortals. However, a figure as powerful as that had been sent flying from a single punch by Dustin. Was that punk that strong? Seeing the severely injured Flint, Cobalt couldn't help but frown. He thought his appearance would merely be a formality. He didn't think he'd encounter a skilled fighter. If he could defeat his son with one punch, then that man was not any weaker than him. He had to take this seriously now. "Young man, you're quite skilled. May I ask who your teacher is?" To have such power at such a young age, he must be from a famous guild in the martial arts world. If this man was someone he couldn't afford to piss off, then he'd be in trouble, so he'd better ask first. "I do not belong to any guild," Dustin answered indifferently. "You don't belong to any guild?" Cobalt's eyes widened. If that was the case, then it was very scary. "Young man, I think you're a talent. I don't want to slaughter you, so if you apologize to Duncan today, I'll let things go." "How does that sound?" Cobalt said lightly. As a veteran in the world of martial arts, he naturally had his own life philosophy. If he didn't know his opponent's background, he'd better not let things get ugly if he could avoid it. "Master Sander, what are you saying? I want you to break his legs, not ask him for a simple apology." Duncan frowned, upset. "Are you telling me what to do?" Cobalt's face turned icy. "Just because I owe you a small favor, I have to give my life for you." Duncan wore a dark expression, but he didn't dare retort. Cobalt turned back to Duncan. "Young man, what do you say? An apology is no problem, of course. However, he owes me an apology, not the other way around," Dustin said with a slight smile. "Heh." Cobalt's eyebrows wrinkled. "Young man, I'm already making a concession. Don't take an inch and ask for a mile. You may come from an extraordinary background, but I'm no average Joe either. I'm sure you've heard of the Hill family, one of the tremendous three. I was formerly their family's fighter." The Hill family. Dustin couldn't disguise his surprise when he heard this. "It seems like you know the power of the Hill family. In that case, let both parties take a step back and remain cordial. Or else, this serves no one any good," Cobalt said. "Since you were the Hill family's fighter, I'm sure you recognize this," Dustin said, taking out an emerald badge. The consultant badge. The moment Cobalt saw the badge, his expression changed. Then, under the shocked gazes of everyone, he fell to one knee, kneeling on the floor with a thud. "Lord Consultant, greetings. I am fighter Cobalt Sander." Under everyone's gaze, Cobalt got on one knee and saluted Dustin with a face full of respect. He was the Hill family's fighter, in other words, he was a high-ranking guard. Meanwhile, a consultant was completely different. A consultant was second only to the master. Everyone, no matter who, referred to him with the respectful address of Sir or Lord. One could count on one hand the number of consultant badges the Hill family had given out. There were merely a handful of consultants, but each and every one of them was all-powerful figures. If Dustin was able to get a consultant badge, then that was sufficient proof of his power and worth. Everyone was shocked when Cobalt suddenly got on one knee. They were completely dumbstruck, their faces full of disbelief. That was none other than the famous Master Sander, the second ranked on the 100 Immortals. People everywhere worshipped the ground he walked on. Yet, a person of that caliber had actually knelt for Dustin. What the fuck was going on? Terence and Duncan were dumbfounded. Julie and the others looked at each other, shocked. They had never expected that just by taking out a badge, Dustin could have scared someone into falling to their knees. In truth, even Dustin hadn't expected Cobalt to react this way. It seemed like the Hill family's consultant badge was truly exceptional. "Master Sander, what are you doing?" Duncan asked in shock. He even looked completely at a loss. He'd invited Cobalt to fight for him, not kneel for his enemy. Ignoring Duncan's words, Cobalt remained on one knee on the floor as he uttered a sincere apology. "My lord, forgive me for not recognizing you. I have offended you greatly earlier, but please do not take it to heart." At some point, sweat began to bead on his forehead. The Hill family's consultant badge didn't just represent power but also a significant status. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that with just one word from a consultant, he could be made to disappear. "It's fine. You were just doing someone a favor. Since things didn't sour further, then let's just treat it as a misunderstanding," Dustin said without a hint of aggressiveness. Cobalt's behavior earlier had at least earned some of his respect. "Thank you, my lord," Cobalt said, looking overjoyed. After expressing his gratitude, without any hesitation, he carried his son on his back and left. Although being ranked second on the 100 Immortals seemed like an amazing feat, it actually didn't count for nothing in front of a true master. After all, in a place like Millsburg, there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers, and divine-level martial artists were a dime a dozen. Seeing Cobalt flee, Duncan instantly panicked. "Master Sander, what's going to happen to me if you leave? What's going to happen?" "You're on your own," Cobalt said, throwing a glance over his shoulder as though he was looking at a dead man. Even the Doyle family couldn't afford to cross the Hill family's consultant. What? Duncan was flabbergasted. He was on his own. What the fuck was he going to do? Seeing that the tables had turned, Duncan spat fiercely. "Punk, this is not over. Just you wait," and attempted to slink away. "Hold right there. Did I say you could go?" Dustin said indifferently. "You come and go as you please. What do you take me for? Punk, I've already let you off the hook. What more do you want?" Duncan shouted, putting up a fierce front. "Of course, I want to give you a lesson. As I said earlier, I want to break your arm. I can't just eat my words." Dustin picked up a fork and flung it casually,